Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to go over the patch 8.7.0 notes. This is for the PTB that will be live at 11 a.m. today. And unfortunately, there's no goal changes in this patch quite yet. They are doing a hotfix next week, which actually might be good because that means the goal changes will be live long before the PTB makes it to live. So that's kind of nice, but also I kind of wanted to test it. I wanted to test this stuff on the PTB, so we'll be able to do that. But let's go over the new survivor, Orela Rose, and her perks. She is, I don't know much about her, but she seems to be medically related. So there's a lot of protection and healing and stuff like that. And some of these perks are pretty insane, and some of them are kind of whatever. First one is do no harm. When you heal another survivor for each hook state they have, heal 50% faster and gain 3% progress for succeeding great skill checks. So basically, if someone is on their first hook, you'll have botany knowledge with them. If they're on their second hook, you'll have will make it with them. And if third hook, they're dead, obviously. But the important thing to note is this stacks with the other types of perks like that. So, for example, if you have will make it and the person that you just unhooked is now on death hook, you will heal them 200% faster. I can already think of some mean builds. You have a friend with the surgeons, you have will make it and body knowledge, and they get off the hook and you heal them in like 1 second or something like that. So it is pretty useful, and I like the idea that you heal people closer to death even faster, and there's no real requirement of you having to recently unhook them like we'll make it, but I'm a big fan of the fact that it stacks with these other perks. Is this overpowered or anything? Not really, because the person that's going to be getting that massive speed is going to be close to death anyway, which is probably when you would need to protect them the most. So overall, I think it's a pretty decent perk. I don't know if that it's going to be meta because, like I said, you can just have things like We'll Make It or Resurgence that will kind of cover. This is just sort of heal more. It's not really covering something that you can't do already. So I would say this one's kind of like average, and I just like the idea you can combine it with other perks because it's just going to be funny. I do want to see if someone is on the ground and you have we'll make it, we're going to live forever, botany knowledge, and do no harm. I want to see if you could repeatedly pick them up over and over again in between the killer's attack cooldown. You might be able to do it. We've been missing like 50% heal speed for that to be possible, but it might be possible now. We'll see though. I'm curious to see how I can mess around with that. Next, Duty of Care. This is a very strong perk. When you take a protection hit while healthy, all other survivors within 16 meters gain 25% haste for 6 seconds. It's basically a sprint burst, but over a longer period of time, but less speed. So this is really good for protecting someone that is getting like tunneled, basically. It's sort of like another shoulder the burden effect. Now, it's a well-designed perk, in my opinion. I don't really see a way that you can heavily abuse this because you have to be healthy and you yourself don't get the bonus. It's only everyone else around you, which means basically you gotta be protecting someone that's getting focused down. Now, obviously, the killer can just go for you instead because you're not getting that speed boost, but that's sort of the point. You're taking the aggression away from the person being focused down. So I think that's really nice. It doesn't occupy an exhaustion slot for the person that is, getting focused down and you're trying to protect them. So they get a sprint burst for free, and they might have another sprint burst or a lithe or a dead hard or whatever. So it's sort of like a free exhaustion perk that they get when you take a protection hit for them, but it's also created in such a way that it's not immediately abusable. It's got a medium range on it, so it's not going to affect people across the map and stuff. It just basically is for the exact scenario of you protecting someone that's getting focused down, and I think it does the job very well. But that's very, very strong. I know in a lot of higher level play, people will try to tunnel people out as quickly as possible, and this will make it a lot harder if you're a killer that does not have a movement speed ability of some kind. If you're the ghoul, fuck him, who cares? But it's going to be pretty good against most killers. So overall, that's a very solid protection perk. Probably not quite as impactful as Shoulder the Burden, but it's something that you can combine with it. So really strong for preventing people from getting tunneled. Rapid response. When you do a fast lock or exit, you suffer from the exhausted status effect for 30 seconds. When you gain exhausted, you see the killer's aura for 2 seconds. So this is basically just a self-enabler for the perk. Kind of like how Jagged Compass has its own effect, despite one of the main effects being it makes every hook a scourge hook. This makes it so whenever you use your exhaustion perk, you're going to be able to see the killer's aura for 2 seconds. So that's really the main point of it. So basically, the purposes of this, you're in a tile, you're looping the killer, you use life out of a window, and now you're going to see for a couple of seconds which way the killer is pursuing you from that. I feel like you could probably extend this by a little bit. I think 2 seconds is slightly too small, but I can see scenarios where, you get a 99 sprint burst, go behind a wall, then you can see if the killer's going to try to moonwalk you for a few seconds. If this just lasted 1 or 2 more seconds, I would consider this a very good perk. But at only 2 seconds, they were way too conservative with that number for this to be really useful. by the time you vault the window and turn your camera, half the aura reading is gone already. So it's like, I don't know. I think this number needs to be buffed up a bit. I like the idea of the perk. They just numbers need to be tweaked. And honestly, I have no doubt that they will be. This is just a baseline thing. The feedback is going to be pretty unanimous that this duration has to be increased. So I think we're going to probably have a release something close to 4 seconds or something like that. And that I think will be pretty decent perk because that will combo with every build because every build runs exhaustion. And now you get, occasional aura reading during a chase kind of on demand when you want it to trigger, which is really nice. So those are the new perks overall. Pretty decent, extremely good, can be good with buffs. That's what we're looking at so far. Now we have some changes to some killers. There's now a cooldown to interrupting unhooks with shock therapy with Doctor. It's not like Doctor needs nerfs or anything like that, but also that's just a really dumb gameplay element where Doctor can just shock and unhook repeatedly until someone dies. That's just terrible gameplay. So I understand. I would love to see Doctor get buffs in other ways, but yeah, that was stupid. So that probably did need to be changed. I would love to see him get something else to compensate for that, though, because he was really good at confirming a kill in the most boring way possible. But yeah. Next, Houndmaster. The dog's vault speed during the chase command is now 0.65 instead of 0.45. So the problem was it wasn't even 0.45. I know Pixelbush did a bunch of tests on it, and it was like 0.25 or 0.35 sometimes. It was like just straight up bugged. So the question is, did they fix that bug and then make it 65, or is this the bug still active and now it's 0.65? I'll need to see this in game because this might be a very almost unnoticeable nerf, or it might be a massive nerf depending on whether or not the bug is factored into this. So I guess we'll see there. She also gets more deviousness, which is fine. The only turn rate limit during the open phase of Demon Strike has been removed. So basically you can turn any direction you want. This is going to be much better and a buff for console players. It's going to be much worse and a nerf for PC players because PC players could do this flicking that would instantly change your direction because now you have to kind of like obey the laws of how the power works and you kind of have to slowly turn with the power. So if you needed to do a quick flick behind a wall as someone was crouching and you're just not going to be able to do that anymore. You have to do the slow standard, lunge, which to be fair is probably how he was supposed to work always, but this will be a nerf to the higher end Onis. But lower end Onis and console players are going to have a great time with this. Oni is probably going to be a lot stronger for you now. Survivor perks, Boon Dark Theory, the haste effect increased to 3%. I think this is completely fine because haste is not able to be stacked anymore. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it even got like 4% or something. So that's fine. You basically get made for this in an area in the boon. So it might actually be usable now. It was pretty dog shit before, so this might actually be a usable perk. Breakout. Now the haste effect is 10% instead of 7%, which is pretty substantial. Champion of Light. This is going to be massive. The haste effect is now 70% while holding a flashlight instead of 50. And Fixated does not give you haste. It just increases your base movement speed while walking, which means the Fixated Champion of Light build is now even stronger. So that might be an unnecessary buff to a pretty annoyingly strong build already. So yeah, watch out for that. That's going to be annoying as killer. No One Left Behind. The haste effect now is increased by 10% instead of applying a separate haste effect. So basically, they want this to be the premier endgame perk, like for Survivor, like the reverse Noed. It literally starts with no one. So instead of no one escapes death, you're no one left behind. And this is going to improve the effect of your haste effect by 10% rather than applying a separate one, meaning it will stack. This is like a rare example of a haste that will stack with other things. So for example, if the unhooked survivor has hope or something, they will now have 17% movement speed instead of just the 10 ignoring the hope because the hope is lower. So that is actually pretty massive. Killer perks, Furtive Chase, haste effect after hooking the obsession is now 10% instead of 5%. That's great. So I think over time we're going to see a lot more of these things where the haste effects can't be stacked anymore, but now the haste effects are going to be buffed on the killer side, which I think does need to happen because a lot of these perks did rely kind of on stacking the perks. So Pentimento, it looks like, is going to be pretty dead. It's starting at 15%, and, if you've got, like, one totem additional up, it's going to be 20%. It used to be 30%. Now, it does affect heal speeds at the same time, which is kind of nice, but really people use this for the repair speed debuff, and that has basically been cut in half. Survivors also now can see the auras within 16 meters, so, yeah, I can't recommend Pentim anymore. I think it's not unusably bad, but it's a lot weaker now, so probably not worth using anymore. Probably over-nerfed. Unbound, the haste effect after faulting windows now 10% instead of 5%. That's good. Unbound needed a buff. It was pretty shitty. This is the perk where after you get a hit, there's a window where you can vault, and if you do take that vault, you get a haste effect. It was 5% for a few seconds. Now it's 10%. That's actually significantly better. So unbound stocks might be rising a little bit. There's the whole new quest system, which we've talked about before. It's basically replacing all of the daily things that you'd have to do in the game. Just look at it in game. It's a lot of changes, and the best thing that they did with this is you can do all of them at once now instead of having to like pick a challenge and then doing it, pick a challenge and doing it. You just do everything in every game, so that's really nice. Base game adjustments: protection to survivors when their teammates spam unhook interaction without ever unhooking. This is to prevent people from trolling you and unhook, fake unhook, fake unhook, fake unhook, and just kind of keeping you in the game. There is now a protection for failing skill checks to trigger right when the interaction is stopped. Good. This is a mysterious line. Okay. This is good. This is something that did need to change. I just hope they've accounted for every way that this could be abused in some way, because I could think of someone avoiding overcharge or something like that. I hope they accounted for everything like that, but if they did, this is great. Immensely frustrating as survivor to leave a generator, have it explode, nothing you can do about it. So very, very, very good welcome change after 9 years, basically. As I said earlier, haste and hinder no longer stacks. So I am actually all for this idea because I don't like them being limited in perk design by having so many perks that could potentially stack. When you start having this many things they give haste or hindered, it becomes impossible to balance because you have to account for the fact that things might stack with the other. So you basically have to release the perks very weak in order to account for the fact that they could be stacked for other things. Now they don't have to do that. They can release perks that are very strong for both sides, not having to worry about them stacking. I do still think they need to do a pass on every haste and hinder perk. It seems like they started doing that, but do a pass on every perk and probably give them buffs in order to compensate for the fact that they cannot stack anymore. But I think overall, in the long term, this is a necessary and good change. I know a lot of people are upset about this, but you got to think about the big picture here. And I do think this change over time is going to be really good and will allow new, very strong perks to exist. So try to look at it that way rather than, oh, I can't run my batteries included, NOED, machine learning, play with your food, 7,000% movement speed build. This is probably a good change for the overall health of the game. You just need to give it a little time to cook, unfortunately. A new surrender option. 10 minutes after the last gen's completed, the killer has the option to surrender. That's great. This needs to be like 3 minutes or something, or 5 minutes or something. 10 minutes is ridiculous. Stop it! After the... Why do they make these links? These need to be just way more lenient, because after all the gens are completed, after 2 minutes, the game is over. 5 minutes is even too much. 10 minutes is a joke. So I have never seen a scenario ever in my life where survivors have held me in the game for 10 minutes after. That's just, I've never seen that in 9 years of playing this game. So I don't think it's ever going to happen, but yeah, make that a lot more lenient, like 2 or 3 minutes. I think that's fine because, yeah, in that scenario, after 2 or 3 minutes have happened, after 2 or 3 minutes when the gens are powered, if you don't have any in-game perks, the game's over. Rarity levels have been revised to better surface different tier value without adding a new tag-based system that allows surface extra information to players. I don't know what the fuck that means, to be honest. Bot improvements. Smoothing the camera direction of bots when they're turning corners. That's cool. Survivor bots no longer trigger happy with their flashlights, which is probably a nerf to bots because they are godlike at hitting flashlight saves, or not saves in general, just blinding you mid-chase and shit. Dude, the scariest thing you can do is have Champion of Light and Fixated and then disconnect because you have given a bot godlike powers. It's terrifying. So this, unfortunately, does nerf the terrifying power of bots. And then we're looking at a couple of bug fixes. Knight got a bunch of bug fixes, which is good because Knight was heavily bugged. But yeah, other than that, I really want to see what they're doing with the Ghoul, but we're going to have to see that next week in the live game, not on the PTB. But overall, those are all the changes coming on the PTB in 4 minutes, which I have to start doing. So that is it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.